To me, it's not writer's block. It is you have a certain expectation that you set for yourself. And every writer goes through the point where they experience a little bit of success. And then they're challenged because if they have a little bit of success, then they have to meet that bit of
Yeah,
success.
if you're expecting a level of professionalism here, you're not going to find it. What drink are you holding up here, sir?
A little Canadian Club, a tiny bit. It is not all Canadian Club. It's a little bit of water.
It's almost 5 o'clock. Happy hour starts earlier for
Well,
writers.
yeah,
A lot of people
exactly.
don't know that, but that's a law that's on the books. Um,
Hmm.
here's a question that I was in my car on the way home, and a song came on,
All right.
and so it made me think about you. What is, if you had to pick one song that is the soundtrack to your first book, Miami Burn, what would it be? You only get one.
Midnight Confessions by the Grassroots. In fact, I mentioned the song in the book. I don't. It was at the time. I remember watching Jackie Brown, the movie directed by Quentin Tarantino, 1997, based on the book Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard,
Yep.
and I had watched it like 3 or 4 times that particular year. It had a huge influence on my style and a huge influence on Titus, and that song is featured prominently in the movie. And so that song kept playing in my mind, and I actually quoted it in the book. I mean, there were some other things too. The music of Jan Hammer, who composed all of the soundtrack for the original Miami Vice TV series.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I bought that, and and I even downloaded a whole ton of extra Jan Hammer tracks, and
Nice.
that I found very helpful.
I got
I love movie soundtracks. I
me
was
too.
buying movie soundtracks when I was 10 years old. My biggest thrill was buying the John Williams Star Wars soundtrack. It's one of my prized possessions. But even now, like I'll buy a soundtrack if there's a movie that had some beat or rhythm or something that really impressed me.
I'm the same way, and it's funny. I have because I write like you. And do you write to when you write? Do you write two soundtracks?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, seriously, I do it. I fire up that Jan Hammer, and it puts me in Miami. It puts me in the vibe. It puts me in the mood. And music is a trigger of emotion that actually really does help to guide a scene.
So my go-to for writing is usually the soundtrack by Harry Gregson Williams, and he did the Spy
Yes.
Game soundtrack, which was a movie by either Ridley Scott or Tony Scott, one of the Scott brothers.
Brad Pitt was in that, right? And
Yeah, it's
Robert
got
Redford.
Brad Pitt and Bobby Redford.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
I own soundtracks to movies that I've never even seen.
Me too.
It's one of those things where like I will discover it on something like YouTube, and I'm like,
Yep,
man, yeah, that really clicks with my writing. And so I'll go
absolutely.
and I'll buy the soundtrack, and then sometimes I specifically I don't watch the film because I don't want
Hmm.
it to influence my writing. I like the
Absolutely.
soundtrack. I like I
All
like the
right.
mood that it puts me in, and I don't want the movie to interrupt my writing. So I never watched that film. I've never seen the last Jason Bourne film because I have the soundtrack, and I use the writing as well, which is
I
funny
can't
because
believe you're saying this, actually, because I do the exact same thing. It's like we are brothers from another mother. Seriously.
so I've got it's Jason Bourne. It's the fourth Bourne movie, and like I said, I've never seen it. And my brother-in-law actually worked on the film. He works in Hollywood,
Oh, that's right.
and
Yeah.
so he worked on the film, and I've never seen it. And I don't have the heart to tell him that I'm never going to watch it because then I couldn't use the soundtrack for my writing. I don't think we're alone in this. Most all
No.
of the authors that I've ever talked to are big into music and listening to music while they write. Music really fuels their writing. I do wonder because I know that there are a lot of authors who are big gamers. They love games. They're keyed in that. That's what gives
Hmm.
them their inspiration.
And that's great.
Yeah, and but at the same time, I wonder because I know a lot of games, and they are very time intensive. very time intensive, and I
Yeah.
wonder like
Yeah.
how other authors make that balance where it's like, man, how do you have time to, play this game and write a novel at the same
Right.
time?
I have, well, I guess a little bit of an addictive personality. I don't know what would make anybody think that, but with the games, I realized I could easily just fall into that, and
Yeah.
for me, it just wasn't. It just wasn't going to work. But and I know that there's like this lit RPG. I mean, that's huge. There's a
Yeah,
lot of people who are writing in this particular area.
very much
And I mean,
into it.
I know nothing about it. I see it and I just go, yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but good for you.
Yeah, so you've never read one of those books?
Nope, never have.
So it's very strange when when that first popped up. I wanted to see like what is this. So I downloaded one and read it, and you're basically reading about somebody else playing a video game,
Right.
and it comes complete with like stats and things like that. So he swung his axe and he hit the orc for 12 points of damage, but the orc had 100 hit points,
Okay.
and it's very. I guess there are people who are into it, and if anybody's
Yeah.
listening to this and they're into it, I'd love your take on it. I can't imagine myself ever getting into that. That seems like very tedious reading where you're doing math and
Yeah.
keeping track of hit points and stats and things like that. I don't know how
Yeah.
that's enjoyable, but some people really like it. And if you like video games, Lit RPG is the place to be. I mean, that field, that genre is exploding. There are people making millions of dollars on
And if I'm going to play a game, it's also, I'm not a big sports fan,
that.
but I like playing sports. I like being involved in a game, and I like it, but I need to be involved in it for me to be interested in it. And I'm kind of unique that way, because it's like, people ask me what my favorite team is, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't really.
I'm not a big sports person either, and that is really, really difficult. Like we're losing a lot of man points here.
Yeah, I know, we really are. That's it. Yeah, that's it. We just, yeah.
And I'm the same
Sorry,
way
guys.
as you. I don't have a favorite sports team. I have developed though that generalized response. So when I'm out and about, maybe I'm filling up my tank, I'm filling up
Yeah.
a gas tank somewhere, and some guy walks by and he goes, "Hey, how about them Bucks?" And I don't know whether they won or lost, so I just go, "Yeah."
Right.
Ah.
Well, you guys just got Tom Brady, so he's.
I heard about that. I heard about that.
Yeah, he's gonna be part of the Tampa Bay Bucks. So, but honestly, I am not. I mean, I live in an area here in Boston that is very sports obsessed. I mean,
Same thing down here.
The people are complete, and I can't have a conversation honestly with somebody beyond. Yeah, Tom Brady, Pat's doing really well this year. Okay, go. That's it. That's the limit of my conversation. And people look at me like, oh, yeah, well, he's weird, but whatever.
While John is gone, I will say a little plug for his books. If you haven't read John Patton, definitely pick up the first book in his series, Miami Burn. Yeah, Miami Burn. I had to look at my bookshelf, but Miami Burn is a really good book. I enjoyed it a lot. If you like Quentin Tarantino movies like Pulp Fiction and things like that, you will really like Miami Burn. He's sort of a cross between Robert Parker and Quentin Tarantino with a little bit of Miami Vice thrown in. Great books, and John is an awesome author. He definitely deserves your support. So go out and pick up one of his books at some point. You can get them on ebooks, and you can also get the paperback through Amazon, wherever fine books are sold. You know what they say.
All right.
All
Here,
right.
phone's back in. Okay, so we were talking about 14th century English literature, right? No.
That's the sort of smart stuff we talk about is, Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales and stuff like that. So what are you reading right now? Are you reading anything good?
Mickey Spillane, and you had mentioned him to me. I'm still working on getting to. I did make some connections between what I do and what Mickey Spillane does.
Here's a funny story about a Spillane or Spillane. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I've never really heard it out loud. I've only seen it in print. Anyways, he had just published, I think, like maybe his second or his third book.
Yeah.
And he was busy building a house in upstate New York. His friend went into town to get some more building supplies, and I guess just checked in with the bank. For whatever reason, his friend had access to his bank, maybe because they were getting building supplies for the house that he was helping Mickey build. And he came back and told Mickey Spillane, like, oh, by the way, your book is a bestseller, and you got a lot of money in the bank, by the way. Mickey Spillane had no clue. I had no clue. That was how he found out his book had become a bestseller, and it hit big, and now all of a sudden he had all sorts of money. He was the type of guy. He said that he did not write regularly. He only wrote when he needed money. The rest of the time he was, like hunting and fishing and, doing whatever Mickey Spillane did.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different paths to the top of the mountain, I guess, is the moral of that story.
There's people that write a book a month. There's some people that write a book every 2 weeks. But there's also other people that write a book every year. And and some of the people that are writing a book a year are doing better than the people that write a book a month. And it really all depends on so many different things that you cannot put your finger on.
And I think we should explore that subject here for just a minute, because
there
is, for new authors, there's this huge pressure to what I call pump and dump, where you write a book a month and you publish a book every month, and they say that's the ticket. And I don't know that is true entirely. I think that it's definitely true. There is so the reason this works is that there is an Amazon algorithm that favors new books. So if you constantly have a new, and that Amazon algorithm is about I want to say it's either a 60 or a 90-day algorithm, where a book first goes up on the market, and for 60 to 90 days, you're basically getting free advertising from Amazon because they're pushing that book in front of readers saying this is a new book. And that can definitely work. Yes, if you're going to do that, you're gonna crank out, a book every month or two and have them on the market. My questions and my concerns about that is always long-term potential. For me, I know myself well enough to know that, yes, I could probably produce a Jake Noble book every 3 months to 4 months. If I really put my nose to the grindstone, I could do that. And I could probably keep that up maybe for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, that's it. I'd be done. I'd be so burnt out. I would never want to write another one of those books again as long as I live. And that is what I always caution authors who are getting started, and they look at that model and they think, well, I can do that. If I write, 5,000 words a day, I can produce.
If I just put my nose to the grindstone and just push it out. Yeah.
You can do that. You could feasibly get, let's say, best case scenario, 10 or 12 books on the market. But then what do you do when you reach that burnout stage? Because every author, if you're an author and you haven't gotten here yet, it's gonna, take it from somebody who's been doing this for several years now.
It's gonna happen.
You're gonna hit that wall. You're gonna hit that place where you're just burnt out and you need a break. And then what do you do? Because usually, and I don't know about other authors. I'd love to hear feedback from other authors who happen to watch
Me
this,
too.
who have hit that wall. You hit the place where you're just burnt out. For me, when I get burnt out, it is typically a month to 2 months where I just need to take a break from all things writing. I don't even open the word processor. I
Really?
just completely regroup. I read books, I watch movies, I go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'll play some video games. um, and I just kind of disconnect from anything work related and allow
Mm-hmm.
my creative juices to recharge. For those authors who are pumping and dumping, you're trying to produce a book a month or a book every 2 months. What are you going to do when you hit that wall, when you burn out? Because I would imagine that, so right now I typically produce a Jake Noble book every year, and I write another book in between those. So I'm actually producing 2 books a year. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the other book is either something I never wanted to publish to begin with, or it's something that's still in the works and it's coming down the road. Anyways, I'm writing 2 books a year, and when I get burnt out, it usually takes me a month or two to recover. And I usually hit one of those burnouts every 3 years or so. I would imagine if you were doing that pump and dump and you're throwing a book up every month or every 2 months, when you get to that burnout stage, it's going to be compounded. At least I know that it would be for
Yep.
me, right? Instead of 2 or 3 months of burnout, it would be six
Yep.
to 7 months of burnout. Everything you've done to goose the Amazon algorithms, everything you've done to sort of fake
Yep.
out the Amazon algorithms and keep your book in the public eye is going to completely flatline. Now what do you do? What do you do? Like
Yeah.
you can't keep that rhythm going forever. Like, you're not going to spend the next 20 or 30 years of your life producing a book every 2 months. I don't care who you are. No, everybody's human. Everybody needs a vacation. You can't do that
Yep.
long term. What do
It's
you
unrealistic.
Yeah, what do you do when you run out of steam? And for those of people who don't know, if you were thinking about that as a legitimate income source, you need to check out authors like John Locke and Russell Blake, I think was his name. Those were really the first 2 guys on the scene doing that. John Locke and Russell Blake, in the early days of Kindle Unlimited and Amazon Prime and all of that, those guys were producing a book every month or 2 months, and for a while you saw them everywhere. I mean, they were selling gangbusters.
Right.
Now they're virtually gone from the marketplace. Russell
Mm-hmm.
Blake was fortunate enough to make the transition to traditional publishing. So
Mm-hmm.
he's still doing all right for himself, but I know that he's only producing like 1 or 2 books a year at this point.
Mm-hmm.
John Locke has pretty much disappeared completely. I haven't seen a John Locke book in ages. Maybe he's still doing it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you really have to think about those long-term repercussions on your career,
Absolutely.
because at least for me, I'm assuming if you want to be a writer, you still want to be doing this when you're 50 and 60 and 70. You don't want to just do this for a year or two and then cash out.
Exactly. Yep. You mentioned Amazon algorithms. Amazon algorithms hate me because I just don't produce enough to make the algorithms like me. So, my options are advertising, whether it be BookBub or which I, don't do anymore, but whether it be Amazon AMS ads or Facebook ads or whatever, which I still have yet to ramp up fully. But, 1 book a year, I think, is doable for a lot of people. I know Jamie Albright, who gave a big presentation at last year's 20K, 20 books to 50K. She only does 1 book a year, but basically just does a lot of advertising, and that's how she gets a lot of her readers and stuff. But again, it's writing a book that really pulls in a very specific target audience that really likes whatever it is that you do.
Sure.
And that's the other key as well. It's like there's a lot of people writing crap, and I mean, you can put out crap. You can write like a book every single week that's full of crap, and then guess what? It's going to sell. If you
Sure.
put out 10, if you put out 10 in a row
It'll
every
sell for a
single
while.
week, sure, it'll sell for a while. You'll make like, but it's not going to last. It's not going to have any type of long-term. And I don't know. I guess that's part of the war in my head. Is I even considered it one point earlier, December, January this year, that I would just put Titus off for a while and just write a series of really fast vengeance, vigilante justice style hero books, and just pound them out and just go boom, one a month. I couldn't do it. I started writing it, and I realized that my particular writing style that moves me, that motivates me, that actually keeps me going, that keeps me interested in what I am doing, is a very particular thing that has to do with a first-person narration that's loaded with sarcasm and comedy and flirtatious comments and things that take time to develop. I can't really plug into that one book a month thing. So.
Yeah. In addition to that, you brought up a good point. Are you here to make a quick buck, or do you want your books to stand the test of time? Somebody might come along that proves me wrong, but I've read several authors, they're the first book or two in their series, and they are the pump and dump authors, because it's like,
yeah.
I just found one today. He published his first book in July of 2019, and he's already got 6 books out.
Mm-hmm.
So
good for him.
This is the beginning of 2020. So this guy's cranking them out, and his series is selling really, really well right now. But I picked up the first book in his series and I read through it, and 10 years from now, that book is not going to sell.
Right.
There's nothing there that makes it a perennial seller. It's a flash in the pan. And so the problem with that is you might earn really good money. Some of these authors, they're earning $100,000, $200,000 and more a year doing this, but you'd better be putting that money into a really good investment account, because those books aren't going to be selling 5 years from now.
True.
And from what I've seen watching the market, that generally bears out. The more of your heart that you pour into that book, the longer tail you're going to have on those sales. At least that is my suspicion. I think that's why a lot of authors, like Charles Dickens, still sell. Those are still timeless stories that we love, because he was really pouring a lot of himself into that.
I believe I recall somebody saying this to me one other time. It was an author I was having dinner with at a restaurant that served pizza, and it had a whole bunch of different kinds of beer available. It was in St. Petersburg. I don't know what author that was.
I know that guy.
He's a
hack. He's a no talent hack.
No, he writes really good spy novels. Oh, I know, it was William Miller, the author of the Jake Noble series. Oh, it was you! Yes, I remember having that conversation, and then in the end, it's a war, because I want to make money. I really want to have a business, and I want to look at this as a business. There's part of me that wants to say, I've got to, get to that $10,000 a month phase, and but then it is constantly at war with the other side that wants to produce the next generation of a Raymond Chandler novel. And that is I have, right before right before launching the audio version of Miami Burn, my first novel, I went through it word for word at least 5 times and changed phrases here and there just to make it as perfect as I could possibly make it, because I love Raymond Chandler and I love that particular genre, and I wanted to do the genre justice. It means so much to me to have it that perfect, and it's carved in stone now, because the narrator, Adam Gold, who is fantastic. Adam Gold is an incredible narrator. People who want a narrator, he's really good. He nailed it so much that that's carved in stone now. I'm not going to change any word ever again. That's it. It's the carved in stone version now. That particular perfectionism that is within me is constantly at war with the part of me that wants to make money. I can't do it. I can't even change my name. I could put the other books out under another name, you know, JG Dervish, I don't know, and just put out a bunch of books. I still can't do it. I don't know. It's just not within me.
As a writer, as an artist, welcome to every day of the rest of your life. I think we're all struggling with that, and we always will be, because I do the same thing. You know the struggle that I had with the fourth book. It was not.
Yes, I do.
Wanted it to be. It wasn't the book that I thought it could be, but at some point I had to go, well, you know what? Hold on a second, self. Everything that I said before, take it and wrap it into this. I'm also running a business, and I have pay. I've got a sick wife who needs medical treatment, and at the end of the day, I've got to get the next product onto the shelves, because I've got fans who are waiting, and the realities of life intrude. So you have to take that into consideration. At the end of the day, you have to fold that into your thinking.
As authors, what do we do? How do we find that balance?
Just that. You have to find the balance. I give myself a certain number of weeks to work on each draft of my book. The first draft usually gets 2 to 3 months, and then each particular draft after that, it's like, okay, self, you've got 6 weeks. Go for it, man.
Yep.
Give it everything you can give it in these 6 weeks, because after that, it's done.
Yep.
Whatever you've made of it at the end of those 6 weeks, and that's, so for those who don't know my particular work method, I'll do a first draft, a second draft, a third draft, and then it's off to the editor. And for myself, wherever it's at after the third draft now is where it's at.
That's where it's at.
I've done the best I can do, and it's time to move on to the next painting.
People have asked me, they've said, would you ever consider doing a teaching writing course? And I'm like, no, because at least not at this moment in my life, mainly because I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, I have no clue how to write. Yes, I know. I've written 3 books, 3 novels that have actually earned me a living last year. And yet, people would say to me, what do you mean you don't know how to write? You've written 3 really, really good novels with all these incredible reviews, but I don't know how I did it.
The reality is there are a lot of artists. There are a lot of fighters. Some people don't know this. There are a lot of boxers or martial artists who are really, really good. They are at the top of their field, and they don't know how they do it.
Yep.
There are some boxers who are awesome in the ring, but you would not want them as a teacher, because they can't break down their method. They can't tell you how they do what they do. It's just intuitive to them. And there are other boxers, they understand how they do what they do and why they do it and when they do it. And those are the people you want to be your teachers.
I sort of got into a groove because I sort of identified that, Titus is about a couple of different things. And if I just keep writing those couple of different things, 3 things actually, if I just keep rotating those 3 things into all the scenes, I seem to produce a little bit more. We all hit a brick wall. We all have this strange thing that some people call writer's block, or that I call, I mean, to me, it's not writer's block. It is, you have a certain expectation that you set for yourself. And every writer goes to the point where they experience a little bit of success. And then they're challenged, because if they have a little bit of success, then they have to meet that bit of success, at least on the same level, if not a little bit more, because there's pressure to do a little more at that level. And then when you actually hit that level and do it again, then the pressure just like multiplies. Then it's like, now it's time for the big one. I get that a lot of people look at this as just a living, and they can just pump out the next one. But again, it's me. One of my personal failings, and this may be a failing or maybe a strength, is that I am so dedicated to this particular craft in terms of that particular genre, that Raymond Chandler, Robert B. Parker thing, only because it had so much of an impact on my life. I feel in many ways reading those books helped me to become a better man. If I was feeling down, or if I was feeling out, or if I was feeling like my life was like I was a wimp, or that something was going wrong in my life, I'd read a little bit of Spencer, and I felt a whole lot better. I felt like I felt like a new man. I felt like going to the gym. I felt like lifting some weight. And, you know, sure, I wasn't solving crimes. Sure, women weren't throwing themselves at me in bars, but still, you know, it gave you that little bit of inspiration to move forward, to make the next day a little bit better. And I think that's why a lot of guys read these things, because they want to be they want to have a little bit more of an exciting life. And even if we inspire them just a little tiny bit. I remember walking out of the James Bond movie, Die Another Day. I had just seen that movie, and I was walking out of the movie theater, and I guess it had pumped me up so much that my shoulders were back, and I was like really confident, and I was walking out of the movie theater, and two of the movie ushers were like laughing at each other, going,
stories have a real ability to inspire us. I remember a very similar feeling when I left the theater after seeing. Did you see Zorro?
Love that movie.
Film. What a great film! And it's got Catherine
Yes.
Zeta-Jones in it, which I think helps a lot.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I remember coming out of that film with the same feeling. I was just pumped, man. I was like, this is awesome. Life is great. I really feel like that's one of the things that modern Hollywood has lost a bit.
Oh,
I can't remember the last time I came out of a film just feeling like,
I do. Recently. Now, everybody has an opinion, and you might love it, you might hate it. It's an I love it or an I hate it movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I identify with the character that Brad Pitt plays in this movie, mainly because regardless of whatever happens in the movie, regardless of what anybody else does, regardless of the circumstances that are happening around him, this particular character that Brad Pitt plays in this movie is the ultimate man. Nothing phases him. This particular character in this movie, I just found so inspirational. And in many ways, he's very similar to Titus in the fact that he's extremely economically disadvantaged, and he just doesn't care.
You know, I'm going to have to see that film sometime. The only thing that stopped me is it's like a 3.5 hour film.
Yeah, I know. It is long.
So I got to kind of carve that time out of my life.
Put it in the chunks.
What did you think of the so we both saw the Spencer movie. It's on Netflix. It's streaming on Netflix. Starring starring
Marky Wahlberg.
There you go, Mark Wahlberg. There you go. It was, so I saw this because you said that you had seen it and you liked it. So I was like, well, if John's given it a nod, that's pretty good, because you are the Spencer aficionado.
I sense.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it did a good job of quickly distancing itself from the source material.
Absolutely, immediately, first scene.
Yeah, and if you can go into it not expecting a Spencer novel, if you're not looking for a Robert B. Parker novel, you're just looking for sort of a fun movie to pass 2 hours, it's a really good movie, and it does have several nods to the source material. For those people who have read it, there are several things in there. The character of Spencer just is completely at odds with the woman in his life, which, if you know anything about Robert Parker, is very, very true. So there are several things in there that it kind of tips its hat to the source material, but it really took it and just ran in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
Pretty good job. I think it was an enjoyable movie. It certainly passed the time. I liked it. I would definitely watch another one. I'll say that.
What I would have wished is that they had not used the Spencer name, that Mark Wahlberg would have just made a movie about a guy who gets out of prison who was a former cop and call it something else. Just name the characters differently, because really there's so little in common with the original that I kind of think that would have been the way to go.
When I watched it, like I said, I liked it. But I thought to myself the same thing. They could have given those characters all different names, called it something completely different, and it could have been its own series in its own right. And I have a sneaking suspicion, and I probably time will bear me out on this one. I think somebody in Hollywood eventually will fess up to this. But I think what happens is I think that some writer out there wrote a really good script, and Hollywood took it and
Yep.
went, "This is pretty good stuff, but it doesn't have any foundation. There's no name recognition. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through some old books. We're going to find something that we can pigeonhole this into. Oh, here we go. It's based in Boston. Here's this famous
Exactly.
detective that was in Boston. His name was Spencer.
Yeah.
We're going to call this a Spencer novel." I really
Yeah.
think that's what happens, is that they just take a really good treatment that doesn't have any name recognition, and they sort of force some name recognition on it so that they can get the sales or the viewership that they think they need.
It's supposedly based on the novel Wonderland by Ace Atkins, who took over the Robert B. Parker franchise. But really, there's no connection between almost anything that happens in the movie and the novel. So.
Yeah, it's so interesting how often that happens, too, that they'll say that they are basing a movie on a book. And for those of us who have already read the book, we go to see the movie, and it's like,
This is nothing like the book.
There's not even nothing similar except for the main character's name.
And yet, Parker himself was notorious for people would ask him, they butchered your story. They completely changed everything around. And, his attitude was kind of like, yeah, but the check was really nice.
That is, I guess I'm probably different from my fellow authors, because I have this discussion with authors, and I'll be interested to see where you stand. There are so many authors that say, well, if they wanted to make a movie out of my book, I'd want creative control.
Yeah.
I'm not like that at all. If Hollywood comes to me and they offer me, and as a matter of fact, I've kind of been back and forth in an email conversation with some guy out in Hollywood that they were talking about doing Jake Noble into a movie or a television series, and
nice.
Yeah, if they're going to throw some money at me, do whatever you want. At the end of the day, I'm sure they will completely screw it up, and I'll be like, what a nightmare.
Right.
But yeah, I will run the check right to the bank.
I think that out of 1,000 authors, 9,999 would agree.
I wonder, because I hear so many authors that say the opposite. They're like, no, I don't want to butchering my book and all of that. But I think that when the rubber meets the road and they're offering you a check with real money, that's going to tip the scales, because most authors, hey, we've got a mortgage to pay at the end of the day.
No, I'd like a house on the beach in the Virgin Islands.
But here's the reality. Even if Hollywood completely butchers your book, it will turn enough people onto your fiction that you will probably be a successful author for the rest of your life.
That's the moment that your name becomes bigger than the title on the cover of the book. James Patterson.
And James publishes them so fast that I think he's given up on titles altogether. He's just numbering his books.
Exactly, yeah.
James Patterson did a master class.
Yes.
Have you ever looked at that at all?
No.
I took that, and it was...
you did?
I did.
Really?
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes. I was eager to take his course, and I'm glad I did. A lot of really good, keen insights on storytelling. And
really?
Yeah, what a lot of people don't know about James Patterson is that James Patterson, like me, he has more ideas than he could ever write in a lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just has reams and reams, notebooks worth of ideas. And obviously, you've only got so many hours in the day. And so that's why he started taking on co-authors to begin with, because it was like, well, I've got this series going, my Alex Cross series, and that's what readers really like. But I've also got all these other ideas that I want to make them happen, and I don't have enough time to do that. So he started bringing on co-authors to sort of fulfill those other ideas, which I respect.
Absolutely.
I'm very much the same way. I've got more ideas than I could ever write in a lifetime. His master class had so many awesome insights into writing and storytelling and what makes good characters and how to move a scene along and what makes good fiction and just how to write a book. I really enjoyed his master class. Definitely glad I took it. I want to say I got it 2 or 3 years ago. And I
Hmm.
just go back and I watch it about once a year to kind of keep myself grounded into some of those basics. I do the same thing with
Wow.
Stephen King's On Writing. Have you ever read that, by the way?
I have, yes. In fact, I have them right over here
Yeah.
somewhere. Yes.
It's a very, very good book, whether you're reading it for his biography, which is, for those who don't know, Stephen King is laugh out loud funny, especially when he's telling his biography. There were so
Yeah.
many times reading through his biography that I just put the book down and really went into belly laughs, laughing at the ceiling.
Yep.
It's just really, really funny. And then if you're reading it for his, here's how I write, that's also very, very good there too. And I'm a plotter. Stephen King is not a plotter.
That's
He
true.
doesn't trust plots. He absolutely talks against plots. And as a plotter, I still tell you definitely read that book. Read On Writing by Stephen King because it has a lot in there that you can take away from it.
Thank you for reminding me
writing.
of that, actually, because I have not read that in a very long time. And in fact, it's been at least 15 years since I've read that. And that really was a huge inspiration to me a long time ago.
Me too.
And I never really took full advantage of it. But you know what? I got to reread that now. It's right over here on my shelf.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got the old paperback too. The spine is completely cracked out. The pages are dog-eared. I've got highlights and underlines, and like every time I go through it, I find something new that really sticks with me, and I want to underline that and highlight that. So yeah, I go through that once every couple of years as well. You'd be amazed how many things as an author that as you get moving along this journey, you learn something. And then it sort of falls by the wayside. You sort of forget about it, and you get 2 or 3 years down the road, and it's like, oh, why did I stop? Yeah, I knew this once upon a time. Why did I stop doing that?
You read things and you go, okay, it goes into the back of your mind, then you write a couple of books, and then you go back to it and you go, yes, oh my goodness, I totally forgot about that. Right. And that pertains so much to what it is that I want to do now.
Because I just got the official alert that Pinellas County, Florida, starting at midnight tonight, is officially going into quarantine zone. We are public distancing. We have to keep 6 feet between ourselves and anybody else, which is good for me because I don't know if I've told you this before, but my wife is one of those like really, really hot sleepers. When she falls asleep, she gets so hot. Really? I swear one of these nights I am going to get an oven pizza and I'm going to cook it on her belly while she's sleeping, just to prove to her that I can. She doesn't believe how hot she gets and like I'm constantly like kicking her away, trying to get her away from me so I can get cool enough to sleep a little bit. It's just scary how hot she gets, man. Like I'm so surprised she hasn't lit that bed on fire or something. I expect one night I'm going to be laying there and just hear whooshing like the sheets go up.
Spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, like I'm rolling out of the bed to get away from it. So let's talk about goals. What do you got for me, man? What are your goals? Not just for today, but what are your goals over the next couple of No, man, that's how we keep each other. That's how we keep each other accountable. Is we gotta make those public goals.
All right, so I'm working on the 4th Titus book, and I am approaching it from a couple of different attitudes. I'm approaching it from kind of the attitude from the first book that I wrote, Miami Burn, and it's kind of almost like I'm writing it for myself. The idea is I wrote the first book kind of for myself because I had no career at the time. At the time, I was making no money from books. I hadn't published a book. I was doing nothing. Apparently, I did something right. So then I wrote the second book in the same vein. I wrote the book that I wanted to write. And there were some choices that I made that did not fit with what people said to do. And the choices that I made in that book apparently really worked really well, too, because I get great reviews, and the second book sold really well. The third book is, I guess, a good book. People tell me it's a good book. It's not a book that... okay, yes, it's not bad. There are elements of it that I like, but I tried to fit myself into the box of what it is that I'm supposed to do, and I tried to plot things, and I tried to do things that I guess maybe would make it more cinematic and or something. I don't know what I was trying to do, but it didn't flow in quite the same way. So in this particular book that I'm working on right now, I'm going back to my original way of doing things. Is that I'm writing a book about what it is that I want to write about, and apparently that seems to work because it worked twice before, and I'm just going to keep on going with that.
Having read the first few pages, yeah,
Thanks.
you're on
Thank
the
you.
right track.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And really, what I write is, it's kind of like, it's not plot based. It's a kind of a weird world view of one man's journey through a particular time and space, and it's warped. It's his own warped vision, and that's why it has to be first person, and that puts a lot of limitations on authors. And I would not necessarily recommend that authors do first person, but I have found that I don't think I can write in anything but first person, only because I have a warped mind and my warped thoughts come out in first person form. I see a lot of things that perplex me and make me wonder about the sanity of the world and my own sanity, and I think that's kind of the stuff that I write. I have a couple of fans who have told me that one of the reasons that they like what I write is that they're walking down the street and they have the same thoughts, and they go, yeah, "That's exactly what I was thinking." And it's not necessarily the plot. It's not necessarily the did the bad guy do this at the third plot point, or did Act 2 begin here? No, I don't think my readers aren't thinking about any of that. They're basically just looking for a good time. They are looking to get away from their lives and to escape into the mind of some very weird kind of strange guy who found himself in some strange place where he is totally out of sync with what is going on and his observations, and at the same time he's solving crimes, which is just a guy fantasy.
You bring up an interesting point, that when an author writes their first book, you're writing for no one but yourself. You're writing for yourself. There's a curious thing in the music industry. It's called the sophomore slump, and music producers know about this. A band will put out their first album, and because when they're making that first album, they're making the music for nobody but themselves. They have no fans yet. They haven't been on tour yet. Nobody knows who they are. They're just making music for themselves, and it turns out to be a hit. And then it comes time to write that second album. Now they're a big, huge, household name. Everybody knows who they are. They're, whoever, blah, they're the Beatles. Suddenly everybody knows them, and there is this huge pressure to outperform your first album.
Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
They were never able to get over that, ever.
Yeah. And it happens to authors as well. I fully believe it happens to authors. I think for authors, it just comes later. Because for authors, usually you've written the first 2 books, maybe the first 3 books, before suddenly you've got fans and people are emailing you, and you're making your living from your writing, and now all of a sudden you feel this enormous pressure, and you go, oh my goodness, I've written like 2 really good books, or I've written 3 really good books, and suddenly now I have to write another one, and it has to be just as good as those books. And so instead of telling the story that you want to tell, suddenly you are thinking about all of these things that you really shouldn't be thinking about, and you really just need to get back in your cubby hole, get back into your own creative space, and tell that story that you really want to hear. Tell your story the way you want to tell it. And I think that's what gets so many of us on like our 3rd or 4th book, is that we just get hit with that sophomore jinx.
Now, you mentioned before that you hit a slump writing your 4th book. Is this what happened with you?
Yes, that was my sophomore slump. I don't know why it didn't, because for those of you who haven't kept up with my career, book number 2 was where my stuff really took off. And I don't know why it didn't hit me for book 3.
Okay.
You
were on a roll.
Right. Maybe I was just on a roll. I had already sort of plotted out book three before book two took off. Right.
Yep.
Like I plotted book three after I got done writing book two. So book two wasn't even published yet. I already had the plot for book three sort of done, and so maybe that helped, or maybe I was just on a roll. But yeah, it was that sophomore slump really got me in book four.
Yeah.
And and I'm through that phase, and now I'm just writing book five. I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna write the book that I want to write. If people don't like it, oh well,
That's cool.
tough stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think every author hits that at some point. If you're an artist, you're going to hit that. If you're just a business person,
Absolutely.
books in order to make a payday, maybe it won't ever hit you. Maybe you walk right past this, and good for you. But if you're an artist, I think, yeah, it's definitely going to come at you.
Well, I mean, I had been struggling with book four for a while now, so I understand your whole book four concept. So, yeah, I do. I'm right there. Maybe there's a thing about book four. Maybe other authors might tell us, yeah, book four was really tough. I don't know what it is about book four.
Poll the audience. The audience, if you're
Exactly.
watching this and you are a writer and you've got more than 4 books out, did you have trouble with number 4? Let us know.
Yeah.
Weigh in on this.
Or which book did you have the most trouble
Yeah,
with?
yeah.
I don't know. I can't say any of them were easy. None of them are easy. And if anybody tells you that writing is easy, it is something we are called to do. It is something we know we can do. It is something that we have a passion for at an early age. But at the same time, getting to the actual mechanics of it and pulling it all off, it was a million times harder than I thought, but I really pushed myself through those first 2 books. But I will say, I have to enjoy it. It's like I cannot do writing where I'm hired to do something. I was a freelance copywriter for a while, and I was paid to do writing for other people. And I have to say that I hated every last minute of it. I hated myself while I was doing it, and I hated the product. And, a couple of the people I worked with were nice, but the vast majority of them were not. And I got to say that whatever I do, I've got to like what it is that I'm doing. And if not, then I'm just going to go do something else. If I hear one more person say, research the market, learn how to think like they think, these particular readers. If you don't know how these readers think, you shouldn't even consider
Why are you writing to them?
Don't even bother. I mean, just do something else with your life. Because this, I grew up with this stuff. I had a passion for this stuff. This can flow on me at certain times. I know science fiction writers who feel the same way. They're like, they grew up on science fiction. And so it just flows out of it.
I have a friend who's a romance author, and she doesn't have to research the market.
I know that a lot of those authors make a lot of money, and they have a lot of really rabid, devoted fans who will actually go to conferences. They were gobbling the paperbacks up, and they were asking the authors to sign them, and they had stars in their eyes. They were like, oh, I love these books. I love Jared. When he was in this book, and that was so, could you sign this, please? Thank you. And I mean, these are just ordinary people like you and me who just, happen to just hit in a little niche. And I'm like, holy crap. Now thrillers that we write, we don't see that. We don't quite have that same kind of reaction. And that's a good thing, because I wouldn't want that.
I get several emails a week from people, but usually it's not from like fawning fans. I mean, usually it's like, because obviously I'm a large portion of my audience is men. I get a surprisingly amount of women too, writing.
A lot of women, yeah, but mostly men, yeah.
I get a lot of guys writing to me, and a lot of what I get is just, you obviously know your way around firearms. You've obviously been here and done this, and thank you for writing a good book that, you know the difference between a clip and a magazine and things like that. So I get a lot of that. Definitely not many fawning things. Although I will tell you a funny story. Kim and I were at a medical conference, I want to say in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And we were talking with the organizer of the event, who was saying, you guys just did, we were speaking there. And the organizer afterwards was saying, "You guys just did such a great job, and everybody enjoyed you." And and my wife was the star attraction, of course, but somebody had come up to the organizer of the event and told her, and she related this to us, and it was like, "Oh, this was just such a great event, and I'm so glad I was here to hear Kim speak." And I also got to meet William Miller, who was, I'm a big fan of his writing, so I'm really, really glad that I got to meet him and shake his hand. So this person had apparently come up to me at this conference and like shook my hand and said something to me, and I have no clue who it is. They did not say, "Hey, you're William Miller. I really, really like your books." They didn't say, "I've read your stuff." They didn't say anything. So now, like, I'm to this day, I think about that, and I'm like, gosh, I hope I said something smart and I didn't just brush the guy off. Like, "Yeah, great, nice to meet you, pal."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, William Miller's really talented, but he's kind of a jerk."
That is funny.
So, yeah, I don't know who that was. I don't know what I said to him. I guess it went over all right. Who knows?
Maybe it was James Patterson.
I would have recognized him.
Okay, all right.
I think if you're an author, you should naturally know your market.
It's got to be an instinct. It's got to be a gut. It's got to be something that you feel. And I've had so many people tell me, it's like, have you researched your audience? And I'm like, I am my audience. I'm my audience.
Right.
I know.
Should be your own audience. And I would never discourage anybody from doing research.
No,
I'm a big fan of research,
and that's great.
But you should already don't try to like you were saying about, you got to research the market and then try to write to market. If you are trying to jump on a trend, like you say, "Oh, well, gosh, zombies are big right now, or vampires are big right now," and then you try to write a book to that market, you're not a fan of it, I think that's going to come through. I
think that is going to hurt you.
They're going to sniff that out. If you're not a vampire person, don't try and write a vampire book.
They're going to know it.
A zombie person, don't try and write a zombie book.
Somebody asked me recently that, how'd you get so many good reviews on your first book? And I honestly think it is because I know the genre so well. I know exactly what the people who read this particular type of genre expect, and I think I actually over-delivered. I do believe that there's a lot of people out there who are getting a lot of bad advice, and they're overwhelmed with a lot of things, and I get overwhelmed. Because there's so much information, and like, for example, right now, there are a ton of things that are being pushed down for free, mainly because we're in this time where everybody's self-isolating. And it's almost too much. You need to find the best information that pertains to you. Well, John, how do I do that? See, that's the thing. You have to figure out what it pertains to you. Like, for example, I was just reading a book lately where they were talking about cover design, and they were talking about blurbs, and talking about very basic things that I have known for a very long period of time. I don't need that particular information. I've got that covered. I had that covered 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now maybe you don't know that. Maybe you, as somebody coming into the business, do not know that. So that's something that you need to address. I almost wish that there was some sort of a hierarchy ladder somewhere, maybe there is, that shows people what it is they need to learn in level 1, what they need to learn in level 2, because what I was reading in this particular book, which was highly recommended, I felt like this is all very basic information to me. I don't need all this. And yet somebody who's watching this, who's thinking about getting into writing, might actually find that very helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So. From somebody who is intimately acquainted with the intelligence agencies in our country, they have a saying that information is cheap, reliable intel is very, very rare, and that is so we hope that these chats just bring something to you. We hope that they inspire you, teach you a little bit, and ask questions. Ask us questions. Sure. Ask us questions. My colleague is John Patton, best-selling author of the Titus Miami Detective Series. I'm William Miller. We hope you've enjoyed. Any last words, John?
Thanks for watching, and stay safe, stay healthy.